Good morning, everyone. Uh, so my name's Greg Ford, and Bill said I had been working with the Center for a while. Actually, it's 4 years. So I've been working with the Center for Industrial Services. Prior to that, I had 40 years of manufacturing experience, almost all of it in a quality management role. So what I'm speaking about today, I've actually lived it in a previous work environment. So uh, as Felicia said, if I may ask for some comments throughout the presentation here, but if you do have a question, if you could hold it to the end, we'll try to answer those. So the topic today is Lean Six Sigma methodology and really the power of combining the two. So start off the first couple of slides, just talk a little bit about, why would a company want to pursue Lean Six Sigma? And I think we would probably all agree that, most companies are in business to make a profit. So, there's a total cost that they need to track to provide the product or service that they're selling to their customers. Sometimes what companies don't do too good a job of is tracking something in the acronym on the slide, COPQ, that stands for cost of poor quality. So there's some hidden inefficiencies in most businesses, and Lean and Six Sigma are great methodologies to help you figure out where that cost of poor quality is coming from. So over time, there's price erosion, companies face competition, and your profit margins may be slipping. So Lean Six Sigma is a great way to attack some of that hidden cost of poor quality to try to reclaim some of your profit. And I know the company that I worked for, that was one of their drivers. Hey, we expect to see some financial benefits from the projects that the black belts and the green belts were working. And another way to look at the that cost of poor quality is this little iceberg diagram, and we shared this a lot in the class. Um, most companies do a pretty good job of tracking what they see above the water. Their scrap rates, waste costs, customer returns, warranty costs, recalls, things like that. Sometimes the things, the part of the iceberg underneath the water, we don't do too good a job of understanding what that is. So, expediting freight, customer complaints, hidden unused capacity, all kinds of things. And the great thing about Lean and Six Sigma, particularly when you start mapping out a process, some of that hidden waste becomes more visible. So it gives you a chance to attack it. So let's talk a little bit about Six Sigma. So Six Sigma, it's a philosophy of business that focuses on continuous improvement. And I can tell you firsthand, that's really a primary driver for Six Sigma. How can we improve our processes? And, a lot of people, they kind of have the misconception that, hey, Six Sigma, that's just for manufacturing. And that's not true, because there's a lot of service industries that apply Six Sigma. Hey, when you think about a process is a process, right? Whether you're making a product or you're providing a service. And Six Sigma is a great way to break down that process to figure out, hey, where there's some issues and problems that we could try to solve. So it really does focus on the existing processes. And we really challenge the green belts in the class. Hey, try to find a problem that you don't know the answer to. So find a problem that you haven't solved yet and employ the methodology to help you get there. So we're solving business problems with eliminating defects. And the key thing about Six Sigma is understanding where the process variation is and trying to reduce it. And that bottom takeaway there, Six Sigma is definitely a proactive tool. So it's focusing on defect prevention, utilizing some statistical tools along the way, rather than just defect detection through inspection. So, the problem with defect detection, and, usually we're pretty good at that, but the problem is at that point, it's too late, right? We can't do anything about it. So Six Sigma forces you to look further upstream in your process to where, hey, what are some of the issues upstream that we could be tackling that's actually the root cause of some of the problems we're seeing downstream? And that's what Six Sigma is all about. So the methodology that Six Sigma employs, and it's represented by the acronym DMAIC. Now, some folks will take that and make a word out of it, so it's not unusual to hear somebody talk about the DMAIC process. So the next few slides, I want to talk a little bit about this roadmap that we use to solve problems, to work projects, give you a little bit of background and history on the Lean Six Sigma overview. And at the end of the slides, we talk a little bit about the project team and project selection. So the D stands for define. So define the problem. And we spend a lot of time up front making sure we understand what the problem is. The M stands for measure. And that's, really using some of the data tools that's within Six Sigma to really quantify the problem, to set a good baseline. The A stands for analyze. Now here's where we're going to start putting our thinking hats on and start using some of the root cause analysis tools to try to identify what's the root cause of the problem. I is where we're going to identify, implement, verify our solutions. And C, we don't want to forget C. C is that we've done all this hard work. How can we control and maintain the solution? And another way of looking at that is, hey, with D, what's broken? With M, measure, hey, how broken is it? A, analysis, why is it broken? I, improve, how do we fix it? And C, how do we keep it fixed? So working this process, starting with define, that's going to be the heart of working a Six Sigma project. The slide here just gives you a kind of a brief overview of some of the topics that we would cover in the training, kind of working the cycle from define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So just about every topic that's on the slide here, we cover in our Greenbelt training, starting with define. So we're going to spend a lot of time up front working on the project charter, making sure we understand what the problem is. That SIPOC is actually a process map, so that's what that acronym stands for. And the VOC is just understanding the voice of the customer, which is really important in any kind of problem-solving effort. Then we move on to measure, and some of the things we're going to do there is maybe a little more detailed process map or value stream map, do the cause and effect matrix, and maybe start to ask the question, hey, what happens when some of our inputs start to fail? Is there anything that we can do about that? And then gather a baseline process capability. And the MSA stands for Measurement Systems Analysis. So whatever we're using to measure the process, how good is it? In Analyze, we're going to start to do some of our root cause tools, start to verify root cause analysis, start to do some more data collection and mining, and making sure that with some of the data analysis tools, statistical tools in Six Sigma, can we make an improvement? Then improve, we're going to go over, we're going to select our solution, implement our solution, and implement some mistake proofing devices if that's appropriate, poka-yokes. The one thing that we really don't do in the Greenbelt training is the DOE, designed experiments. That's reserved for more of the black belt training. Control, hey, make sure we leave with a good control plan. And that really is not the stopping point. The thing with control is you have to monitor it over time to make sure that what you selected was effective. And another key thing is the handoff. So you think about this, after you've gone through this process, there may be some improvements to the process, you may have to do some training, and that's where it's really important for the belt, whether it be the black belt or the green belt, to hand off all that information to the process owner, who can now take responsibility and make sure that the project continues. So you guys will have to excuse me on the next few slides. It was difficult distilling this down to just a handful of slides to try to give you a high level overview. But the next 3 slides, I did put a little bit of detail into this. So when we do the Greenbelt training, I always emphasize, hey folks, if we could distill Six Sigma down to 1 slide, this is probably it. And Y is a function of X. And we say, hey, what does that really mean? So most companies do a really good job of understanding the Y, so our outputs, but the X's are really important. So they're the inputs to our process. So the whole thing with Six Sigma is identifying those X's. Hey, which ones are critical? So as people start to understand Six Sigma better, they really start to think in terms of X's and Y's, inputs and outputs. And here's another slide that I like that we use. It's a little problem-solving tool we call the 6 M's. So Six Sigma is all about understanding where the variation is in your process. And if you take a step back and kind of take the airplane 30,000 foot view of your process, and you kind of look at it as that big black box, we always ask the class, hey, where's the process variation coming from? And we tell them, hey, if you use the 6 M's, do you think you could link variation to your process? So one of the M's being man. So think about it. Are there differences in the way the operators perform the job? How about the machine? Are we utilizing different machines? How about the materials we use? Maybe we've got different raw material suppliers. How about the methods? How well do we train people on our standard procedures? Then measurement, whatever we're measuring in the process, how good a system is that? And then the 6th M is we use that from Mother Nature, which really is just the environment of the process. Hey, is there anything in the physical environment, whether it be temperatures, heat, humidity, or maybe just the clutter or disorganization in the area that's impacting the variation? So the thing is, the more variation you got in those inputs, and you can see as it comes out the other side, and it's represented there by the normal distribution, that curve down at the bottom, the more variation going in, it's all additive, the more variation coming out of our process. So we really emphasize this point with the trainees that you got to understand where the variation's coming from in your process. And then the third one that I brought in from the training was this concept of the hidden factory. Now, this is the one that was probably an eye-opener for us when my previous company did this 20 plus years ago. We always kind of took that traditional view. Hey, as long as we get it through the process and we get it through the final test and approval, hey, things are okay. But what Six Sigma really forced us to think about was, every time you touch that product or that service a second or a third time, and you're adding cost to it. You might be putting more labor into it, more energy cost, more maintenance cost. Anytime you don't do it right the first time, you're faced with this hidden factory. And in the class, we do a little exercise to emphasize this metric, the roll throughput yield. And all that's saying is, if you have a multi-step process, what's the chance of all those inputs making through those multiple steps without a defect? And that's a better sign of what your yield truly is. And that's why we use the roll throughput yield. And to just kind of put that into perspective, so Six Sigma is a metric, and the Sigma level reflects our process capability. So the higher your Sigma level, the better your quality. So when you think about capability, think of it this way. Hey, the voice of my customer is the specifications. The voice of my process is the variation in my process. So the higher the Sigma level, the better our process capability, and that translates to fewer defects. And I always tell the folks in the class, and I give them a hint that this question is going to be on the test. Hey, how many defects per million opportunities are there in a Six Sigma process? 3.4 million, so not many. So I tell them if they miss that one, they're going to fail the class. So let's move a little bit to the other methodology, and it's Lean. So Lean is a systematic approach to the identification, elimination of waste, non-value added activities through continuously improving the product at the pull of the customer in pursuit of perfection in all products and services. That's a really good definition for Lean, because it hits all the core elements of Lean. But if you need a little simpler definition, and we use this one a lot in the class, hey, Lean simply focuses on waste elimination through continuous improvement. Hey, how can I take the waste out for continuous improvement to make my process better? And we use this real simple little diagram here. Hey, think about from the time the customer places the order to the time the product, the finished product, is out on the shipping dock and it ships to the customer. So there's a time component there, right? So in the class, we stress that as the process lead time. So, very simply there, how much waste is in our process? And the more waste you got in the process, it's going to slow that time down. So that one of the hidden benefits, I think, of Lean, in addition to taking waste out, hey, it makes your process a lot more flexible. So now, instead of it taking a little longer, if you can eliminate that waste, or at least minimize it, mitigate it, you're going to make that time shorter. So lean definitely can have a benefit on your process lead times and your cycle times. And another little tool we use in the training is kind of based on the old 7 deadly waste, and we've added one for the N, not utilizing talent. So we always ask this question: when you think about wasting your process, and we use the acronym downtime. And for most companies, I don't care if you've got making a product or you're providing a service, downtime's not a good thing, right? So the D stands for defects. Where are we making our defective product or service? That's definitely not something we want to do. The O stands for overproduction. So now we're making more than we need to, and there could be a lot of hidden root causes for why we're doing that. The W, and this is really a terrible waste, we're waiting. Hey, the operator, the employee, they're waiting on something. They don't have anything to do. They're waiting on people. They're waiting on information. They're waiting on materials. Maybe they're waiting on approvals. So there are a lot of reasons for waiting, but again, that's slowing us down. The N is the one that we've kind of added from the original 7 deadly waste. So when you talk about non-utilized talent, and Bill mentioned that I do ISO auditing also, you know, one of the things we look for in an ISO audit is the competence of the people doing the job. So, and that's based on their education, experience, and training. So, you know, typically on an ISO audit, we'll talk to the operators, the employees, and the question always comes up: hey, how are you qualified to do this job? What kind of training did you get? So I think this non-utilized talent, I think it's a good fit in these 8 ways, because it forces companies to look at, hey, how good a job are we doing on cross training? Do we have a good succession plan in place? So don't forget your people. The T stands for transportation. And again, this one was kind of an eye-opener for us in my previous job. We move stuff around a lot, and most companies do. The layout may not be optimal, and they may be moving stuff from warehouse to one location to the next. So every time you handle it, you know, you're introducing the opportunity to make a mistake. And then inventory is really kind of connected to the overproduction. But at this point in Lean, it really focuses hard on inventory, because again, we're trying to provide the customer with what they need just on time. And that excess inventory is a waste. Anybody got any thoughts onto why you wouldn't want to have a lot of excess inventory lying around?
Feel free to unmute your mics and speak up.
Excess inventory. What's some things that could happen there?
Design changes could make you go back and do rework.
Perfect, Gordon. Hey, the longer stuff sits around, and Gordon's exactly right. Hey, it could become obsolete, right? There's a design change. Customers got new requirements, and now all that old stuff in inventory, we got to find a use for. The other danger about too much inventory, hey, the longer it sits around, hey, there's chances that they could be damaged, right? Maybe somebody hits it with the forklift, we drop it, who knows what could happen. But we want to minimize inventory as much as we can. The M stands for motion. So now we're kind of looking at the interface between the operator, the employee, and their work area. And you start asking the question, well, how effective, how efficient is that? And so you start looking at some safety, ergonomic issues. There's a little acronym we use in the training, POUS. So point of view storage. So motion kind of takes into account, do I have everything that I need in my work area to get the job done? And there's a time component there, right? Hey, I don't want to have to be on the job site and all of a sudden realize, hey, I forgot a tool or I'm missing a part. Now I have to go back to the maintenance shop, or I have to go to the store's warehouse to pick up something. So motion is an area where companies can make a lot of improvement. And the E stands for extra processing. So here we're adding more value than what the customer is really willing to pay us for. And again, this can just evolve over time. Processing changes, maybe for one customer, are incorporated for all customers. And before you know it, we've added on all these extras that maybe all the customer base is not really concerned with, and they're not paying us for it. So when you think about those 8 waste downtime, and you look at the little graphic to the left, it says, and we won't spend too much time arguing about the number here, because sometimes we get into some good debates in the class, but think about what Lean does is it breaks down what's value add versus non-value add. And the 8 wastes are definitely non-value add work.
Hey,
And
Greg, before you continue on, we did have one additional comment in the chat. It said that one of the issues with that is the inventories take longer to rebuild in the event of a shutdown.
Great point. Thank you. And just to kind of build on that point of value add. So really, what does the customer want? It's the CVA, right? The customer value add. And I always kind of truncate this definition down to, hey, where are we changing the form, fit, and function of the product or service that the customer is willing to pay us for? Hey, that's what the customer wants, right? And that should be one of our primary focuses. Now, the business value add, those are the tasks the business has to do, right? We have to have an invoicing function. We have to have a purchasing function. There's probably some regulatory requirements we got to meet. We have to do inspection, testing, packaging. But we're not changing form, fit, or function. But those are tasks that the business has to do to stay in business, and we want to make sure those are streamlined and as efficient as possible. And then on the right, the non-value add, that was the downtime waste we were talking about. And if at all possible, we want to identify those and take them out of the process, and worst case, at least mitigate them. And you kind of tie all those Lean principles together, and you think about it from a customer's perspective. And I really like this slide. What does the customer want? Hey, solve my problem completely. Don't waste my time. Provide exactly what I want, where I want it, and when I want it. And hey, if a company can do that by addressing the waste that's in their processes, looking at some of the process lead times, cycle times, trying to take some of that non-value add waste out, hey, they're well down the path of establishing a leaner operation. All right, so the slide here really just kind of ties the two methodologies together. So, you asked, hey, do these things work together? And I think they do. So just a little history on my background. The company that I worked for, they initially approached Six Sigma. So it was all about tackling variation in the process, using some of the problem-solving tools, statistical tools, to understand their processes better. But we quickly realized that, hey, there was some of that non-value add waste that we just weren't tackling with the Six Sigma process. And that's where the Lean came in. So we incorporated Lean. So if you have a methodology that uses Lean to focus on the waste, improve your cycle process times, and utilize Six Sigma to identify where the variation is, take the defects out, you're going to end up with a very robust quality improvement system to establish a robust quality management system to meet the company's needs. So I definitely think there's a synergy between the two. So I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about how a typical company would organize to implement something like this, and organizing for Lean Six Sigma. And in the class, we talk about these 7 distinct roles. Really don't have enough time to get into each of these today, but I do want to stress that this varies from company to company. Working with CIS, we're in a lot of smaller, medium-sized companies, and they probably don't have the resources to staff all these positions here. So it does depend a little bit on the size of the company and their maturity, their journey on the Lean Six Sigma roadway. But at a very high level, there needs to be somebody in the leadership that's kind of sponsoring, driving the initiative. The project sponsors and champions, I'm going to focus on the champions on the next slide. Implementation leaders, somebody to drive the program. We didn't have this initially, but we did after we were into the system a few years. We added what we called a productivity leader. The Lean Six Sigma coach, again, some companies may not have this, but most times it's the master black belt, but a good black belt could serve that role. And then the focus really on the projects are the black and the green belts. Then the team members, your subject matter experts in the areas, and a process owner. So again, I'm going to focus on 3 of those roles. And the first one is the champion. And the point here I just wanted to make is that there does need to be somebody in leadership that has some ownership of this, that's providing some coaching and encouragement to the belts. You know, the way that my previous company did this, it was mostly the site managers for the plants. So they had a productivity goal that they had to achieve. So they had a vested interest in, you know, providing support for the green belts, the black belts, and helping them with the project selection and approval. I'll never forget, Phil was his name. He was the site manager at Chattanooga. And he said, "Hey, Greg, what I'm here for is to get you the resources if you need it, and to break down the barriers where there's barriers." And he was very good at that. So the champions are responsible to keep the initiative and the program moving. And I'll talk a little bit about the green belt. So this is, you know, we do a lot of training with the green belt. So we have a lot of experience here. So they get 2 weeks of training. And I always tell the green belts very early on, it's usually that first day when we go through the project management module, hey, by default, you're the project manager. So you are the leader. So, you know, they're the ones that's going to run the teams. They're going to keep the teams focused. They're going to work with the champion and the process owner to make sure that the project fits the business objectives. So really the green belts are the boots on the floor, helping get the work done. And they're working with the subject matter experts in the area to improve the projects and make sure they're successful. And the third role I wanted to mention was the team members. Now, these are folks that might not necessarily get a chance to work on improvement projects. So I always call these the subject matter experts, the folks out on the floor in the office that have the tribal knowledge. They know how things really work. So, you know, they can provide some really good content to a project by sharing their knowledge and expertise. And obviously they should have a vested interest in this because, hey, whatever we're working on should be something that's improving their process in their area. So this is a kind of a side benefit of this is, the training benefits of, developing your people by getting people to serve on these Six Sigma teams. And the way that most companies employ this is with project selection to drive the program. And I kind of added problem solving here on that first bullet. So whether you employ the training, full-blown project selection, we're going to start selecting projects and working them. Just as well, you can employ Lean and Six Sigma just to help you solve problems. But if you do decide that we're going to make this a part of our continuous improvement efforts, we're going to identify areas and projects that we want to see some improvement. That's where you start asking the question, what, where, when, why, what are we trying to work on here? Why are we doing it? Where are we doing it? When? And then getting into how we're going to do it. And that's where the green belt or the black belt, focuses in on a project and starts to deploy some of the tools and the training that we conduct. Hey, this is a real simple sample project charter that we use in the class. It's pretty busy, but we actually got it all on one slide. The left-hand part of the slide here is it focuses a lot on process definition. Hey, where are we working? Why is this area important? And a couple of things that we really stress in the class are make sure you do a good job of defining the problem and defining the objective or the goal for the project. And then along the way, you're going to want to define some metrics or KPIs that tell you from your baseline, are you actually making an impact and starting to move towards your goal? Then on the right-hand side are just some things that, hey, you can start to ask, are we going to see any kind of benefit from this project? It could be a soft benefit. It could be a hard benefit. There could actually be a financial saving. And another key thing is the scope and boundaries of the project. And we really stress that in the training to make sure that we understand that moving into the project. Like I said, a couple of areas that we really focus on, And I included this slide. One reason is because I like it. And I think it really sets the tone for defining a project that you want to work on. You want to make sure the problem statement is concise, but you want to make sure, and I love the graphic, it describes the pain that you're facing. So I can read that problem statement and I immediately know why you're working in this project. So if you can define what's occurring, where it's occurring in the context, the time frame, when did it start, and if you can say something about the magnitude of the problem, the impact, you've probably done a pretty good job of describing the problem. And then to follow that up on the objective and the goals, if you can, and we use the SMART acronym, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. I always tell the green belts in the class, because this is, for most folks, this is brand new. They come in with a blank slate. And from experience, I tell them, hey, pick something, be specific, make sure you know the boundaries of what you're working on and the scope is manageable. Make sure there's something you can measure in the project so that you know when you've achieved your target. And the third one that I really stress is attainable. So I always tell them, hey, don't pick a project coming into the training that the company's been working on for 10 years and nobody solved it yet. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Pick something that's a smaller scope that you think you actually see a path to get there using the tools. So that attainable piece is very important. And then, just to kind of summarize the expectation of a green belt as a project manager, and they are project managers, get the results on time, keep the project within the scope of the project. Hey, build that additional organizational capability, and that's where we're utilizing our employees and giving them some additional training. Communicate the status of the project, so that's where they're communicating with the stakeholders, the champions, the process owners. Really the core, what they need to do is organize and lead the project team and do that effectively. And if there are substantial benefits to the project, to make sure that those results are credible and they can show how they measure them. So the last 3 slides here, I just wanted to kind of give you a real high level overview of a typical green belt class. And it is 10 days of training. One of the, I guess, maybe the preferred model, or the one that we utilize a lot, is we do it over 5 weeks. So we'll do 2 days at a time. The things that are emphasized there in the boldface are the modules. So the training's got a lot of material in it. I think it's up to maybe 37 modules, but integrated into the training, the things that you can see underneath those modules are some class exercises, some things where the trainees can actually practice and implement the tools that they're taught. And the other thing that we try to carve out in the training for those that are ready is an opportunity for them to review their projects and get a little feedback from the instructor. And this slide here really kind of summarizes the deliverables for the course. So again, the materials, and I said the slide says over 30, it's actually over 35, but it focuses both on Six Sigma and Lean tools. There's some statistical training in there. There's some problem solving training. And then all the support data and files that we need for the statistical analysis. There's baked in a lot of interactive training with the class exercises. And most of the students really enjoy this. They get a chance to participate on the teams, practice the tools, and we give them an opportunity to kind of do feedback and teach back to the class. The project reviews, if they're that far along, we do carve out some time for them to give an update on their project and get some feedback from the instructor and the class. And then at the end, we do utilize a little test, and it's open book. And completing that and passing the test, they get a certificate of completion. Now, there is one additional step if they wish to pursue it, and that is a certification through UTCIS as a certified green belt. And I won't go through all the details here, but basically they have to complete the project, they have to show a financial benefit, and they have to show adequate use of the tools, how they got from define to measure, and they have to do a formal presentation in front of their company management and one of the instructors from UTCIS. So that's kind of the way that the course is outlined today. And the last slide here just talks a little bit about some of our upcoming classes scheduled for the second half. The first one coming up is our Lean Six Sigma Green Belt class, open enrollment in Knoxville, starting week 1 in July. And then after we complete that in August, a real short break, we're going to hopefully conduct a Green Belt to Black Belt class also in Knoxville, starting in September. And I'm anxious to do that one. I hope we get enough signed up because we haven't had an opportunity to do that one recently. So, hey, I know I covered a lot and hopefully in about 20-25 minutes there. But again, high level. I wish I had more time to go a little bit more in depth, but I appreciate your attention. And having said that, and giving Felicia some time to get things ready on her end, are there any questions from anyone?
I have a couple of questions from the chat for you. The first one is how long have Lean and Six Sigma been used to improve processes?
Oh my goodness, that's a good question. Well, I think probably both started to get traction in the 80s. Six Sigma goes back to some of the earliest companies were Motorola, General Electric, Allied Signal. And I remember it kind of got on my radar in the early 90s. So I think all of those companies started, the latter part of the 80s, mid to late 80s. And I know Lean has evolved over time. Again, getting a lot of traction in the 80s. You can almost draw a parallel with some of the work we do with the automotive companies in the core tools. You start to see a lot more focus on quality in the early 80s, and then some of these programs become formalized in the 90s and in 2000.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question is it easier to use the Lean Six Sigma in a factory or in an office administrative process?
Oh, that's a good question too. So most of my experience, I got to tell you up front, has been in manufacturing. So I've seen it deployed and utilized in manufacturing. But having said that, the company that I worked for was smart enough to realize, hey, we got a lot of transactional processes, from customer service to order to cash. And there were a lot of projects at our corporate office looking at some of those transactional processes to make them more efficient. So honestly, I think it applies in both areas.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have another question from the chat, and it is, are there certification exams for Lean and Six Sigma?
Yeah, so I mentioned the one with UTCIS, and that's kind of something new that we've started. We've had a couple of green belts that have gone through the training over the last couple of years that have shown an interest in pursuing that. And it's a handful at this point. Now, if you want to go outside the scope of the university, there's an organization called the American Society for Quality, and they actually offer a formal certification. And if you just Google ASQ or American Society for Quality, you can get some information on that certification. I actually, many years ago, I saw a need. I thought, I'd like to get certified as a certified quality engineer. And I went through the ASQ's process for doing that. I also did it with their process for quality auditing. So if you're really interested in that, search out ASQ.
Okay, great. Thanks, Greg. And the last question so far, if you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or I'll let you speak up. But I do have one more question from Gordon. And he says, what software will you use in the class? Do participants need a copy to attend? Sorry, that was a very butchered question.
No, but a good one, and one that we struggle with at times. I got to be honest. So the software of choice is Minitab to do the statistical analysis. And when I did the training 20 plus years ago, our company, they provided that resource. Minitab is expensive. I will tell you that up front for the licenses, but it's a great piece of software. Now, we actually have two versions of the Greenbelt training. one utilizing Minitab, the other one using a software that's an add-on to Excel. It's called Sigma Excel. So those are the two that we offer. There was one company that had a third add-on to Excel, and I actually taught the class. I did it in Minitab, but then I stopped and I did it with their software. So it was a bit of a challenge, but yes. So that's usually, Gordon, in the upfront, we tell the students, hey, have a project in mind, and so to work with the training, and have whatever software the company's agreed to, whether it be Minitab, Sigma Excel, or something else.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions out there at this time? It's hard for me to see if anybody's thinking about a question because we have a lot of people with their video cameras off. But I don't see anything else coming through the chat. So if you want to speak up now, you can do so, or forever hold your peace. Just joking. Just joking. We have everyone here ready and willing to take questions to help you through this. So I've spoken offline with a couple of persons that need some additional information. I'll be happy to share that with them afterwards. Bill, do you have anything else?
Just wanted to thank you, Greg, for sharing this information with us today and taking time out of your schedule to do so. Also like to thank Felicia for producing for us again today. And thanks to all of you guys who attended. Certainly, if you've got additional questions in general about Lean Six Sigma, or if you've got questions about our training program here at UTCIS, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.